Friday, July 27th, 2018, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. This morning I'm going to look at the Fed again. I've seen an interesting article in Zero Hedge by Brandon Smith from altmarket.com, alt-market.com. He says some interesting things, and I want to look at Bitcoin a little bit, at the technical picture, what I think is happening right now, and just look at the markets, of course, and talk about some statistics coming out later today from the US that could move things around. It's 8:23 a.m. London. It's still very hot, and there are no clouds in the sky, and the sun is out. Today we also have a total lunar eclipse, and we'll be able to see it here from the UK. It's at 9:21 p.m. the maximum of the eclipse. We'll be able to see that. I don't think, unfortunately, the viewers in the States are not going to be able to see this lunar eclipse. It's going to be the longest eclipse until 2135, so quite interesting. The markets, what are we doing this morning? Gold is actually rebounding a little bit. Yesterday, gold was doing fairly well, and it drifted lower again as the US session went on. Right now we're at 12.25, up $2.50. Range has been fairly narrow, 12.22 to 12.25.50. Spot silver up 7 at 15.45. Right near the highs. The high's been 15.48 and the low 15.35. Yeah, one of the reasons as well why the gold price drifted lower is because the dollar strengthened against the pound, and the euro, especially the euro, dropped yesterday. There was a ECB meeting, a press conference, and the euro just dropped. And it seems like the FX people, the bullion banks, the people who really control the foreign exchange market. I know it's a huge market, but the big banks are still the big participants. They kind of peg gold. They treat gold as if the gold was like the pound or the euro. If the pound and the euro go down, they also make gold go down, even though gold is a special currency, I would say. It's not as, you can't compare gold to the pound, to the euro, to the yen, or to the dollar for that matter. But they keep that paradigm that when the dollar goes up against crappy currencies, gold should also go down against the dollar. And that's what we have at the moment. And the way they do that is through fractional reserve and the paper market, of course. The Dow right now is up 42. Dow did well yesterday, while the S&P and the NASDAQ dropped. Quite strange, in my opinion. It's like silver being down, $1 in one day and gold being up. Didn't make too much sense, but that's the way it is. We're at 25,575, the Dow. S&P is up 6 now, up 1/4%, so outperforming a little bit. The Dow is at 2843, and the NASDAQ is gaining back some ground. It's up 0.5% or 37 points, 7,436. Currencies, the pound is 131.15. It's up a little bit here. It has come off in the last few days from above 132. It's up about 5 pips, so insignificant rise. Euro is at 116.50, so we're about down about half a big figure since yesterday when I did the video. It was at 117, even though from yesterday's close is up 10 pips. And the dollar is recovered against the yen. It's almost back up to 111. It has been as high as 111.26 this overnight. Right now it's at 110.98, down about 1/4% actually against the yen, the dollar at the moment. What else? The dollar is down as well against the Chinese currency. It's down 1/3% at 680.32. WTI crude is at 69.20. So still fairly elevated. The high's been 69.41. 70 probably will be the next resistance there for crude. And what about the bond market, the 10-year yield? How's that doing? Well, we're at 298 overnight right now. The range has been 297 to 299. So we're actually fairly close to that 3% level. What could move that to above 3%? Well, excuse me. There's a number coming out today, statistics from the US at 8:30 a.m. New York. And that's the GDP. It's the preliminary number for GDP for the second quarter. And it's expected to be at 4.1%. So they're expecting GDP to have grown at a 4.1% annual rate in the second quarter. This is just a preliminary number. There's also an advanced number, which is the second number, and then the final. So this is just the first estimate. And yeah, the previous GDP number for the first quarter was 2%. So they do expect a pickup in GDP. I read an interesting article by Jim Rickards yesterday about the dollar, the Fed, and he said that GDP seems to pick up early in the year, and then towards the end of the year it drifts slower and ends almost like unchanged annually, and that trend is happening for a few years now, and that GDP growth now is still is not a growing at trend like it did, from 1980 to around 2008. It was growing above 3%. Right now, I think the trend, the growth, average growth is since the last 10 years is about 2.1%. So yeah, this number, if it comes out like at 5%, this could definitely get the 10-year yield up to 3% and above, because the Fed would be even more pressed to raise rates, or even raise rates more than people think in the future, right? The GDP price index, which is the level of inflation that's a discount into the GDP, is expected to be 2.3%. So yeah, keep an eye on this number. It could move things around. It's out at 8:30 New York, 1:30 p.m. London. So what's happening to Bitcoin? Bitcoin had rallied quite a bit in the last few days, and right now we're seeing a pullback in the last couple of days. Well, I think it's just a technical reaction to the breakout that we saw. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. About 5 days ago, we broke above 7,800, and we went all the way up to around 8,500, right? And it looks like now we're just pulling back to test that breakout at 7,800. So that's what I think is happening. 7,700, 7,800. Does that mean that this rally is over? No, I don't think so. A lot of times markets do go back down to retest the breakout area. So I would expect maybe things to stay a little bit negative for now. Right now, the low has been 7,876. So we could see Bitcoin continue to go down a little bit, even to 7,700, 7,800. But I would expect to see good support there. And all the other cryptocurrencies are probably going to follow somewhat Bitcoin. Some will be weaker, some will be a bit stronger. And that's what I see there. So that's Bitcoin. So yeah, what about this article I talked about? Yeah, it's by Brandon Smith from alt-market.com. He says, Trump versus the Fed, America sacrificed at the New World Order altar. And I'll just summarize what he says. It's a fairly long article which I've read, and I recommend you read it. I'll put it down in the link below. basically he's saying that, yeah, a lot of people think that the globalists use the United States and the central bank to benefit, to as like a, how can I say, a golden a goose, you know, that's laid a golden egg, you know, to benefit from it. But he actually says that they're using the United States for a greater objective of having the bankers, an elite group of people, run the whole world, right? And that the U.S. is just a tool for them, has only been a tool for them to exploit the whole system, and that they won't care if the economy collapses. And they don't, of course, because they pump and dump things. They don't care if the dollar doesn't, how can I say, remain the world reserve currency, because they've got their own plans, right? Through the BIS, the IMF, and the world currency. And they've got, you know, the Chinese and the Russians on board, they think. So he's basically saying, yeah, and that Trump, you know, has changed his agenda. He was very anti-Fed during the campaign. He said that the Fed was keeping interest rates low to help Obama, and the stock market. And then he came in and he became friendly with the Fed because the stock market was going up. But now with the trade wars and interest rates rising, he's against the Fed. And he even thinks that the globalists don't mind this Trump versus Fed uncertainty, because it will help bring down the markets and the system. And that, yeah, and his conclusion is that unless the people in the U.S. go against institutions like the IMF, the globalist institution, IMF, BIS, and maybe the CFR as well, it will be a bad thing even if the Fed is, if they collapse the Fed. It won't matter. Of course, a lot of people will say, oh great, Trump is for real, he's gotten rid of the Fed, but then we're going to, you know, America's going to be taken out of the fire and thrown into, out of the frying pan and thrown into the fire, right? Because they're going to have to join this globalist currency. That could be true, but let's hope that that doesn't happen. Let's hope that maybe America goes against the IMF, the World Bank, the BIS, the CFR, and go back to its roots of the Constitution and constitutional money, gold and silver. Abolish, yeah, the Fed might come down with Trump and lose credibility, but let's abolish it. Let's really go back to constitutional money. So his view is fairly pessimistic, but I hope that he's wrong, but he could be right, of course. And we could see, as he says, you know, a group of elite bankers taking over the world. And because they will be the ones who, you know, come out of the woodwork to help us, right? Because we couldn't cope having this dollar system, it's collapsed. And even though they're behind it, they'll be the ones to be able to fix it. Let's hope that doesn't happen. And that's why I think, yeah, getting rid of the Fed is only the first battle. So what would be the second, you know, and final battle of this war? Well, it would be to get rid of institutions like the IMF and the BIS, Bank for International Settlements. Very few people talk about that. BIS is seen more as a world regulator for the big banks, which they are, but they're much more than that. It's where the whole manipulation of the system happens. So yeah, that's it for now. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share it, subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. You can also follow me on STEEMIT, DTube, and on Twitter. And I'll talk to you later. Take care. Bye.